got in.
It's about the book, yes, about the movie business message, chapter 1 and chapter 7. I'll give you 2 5-minute things to look at. You probably won't understand them. And I will put together.
No, I'll put together a summary of the 2 videos that
no one has some talking points tomorrow.
Except that
Okay.
LGBTQ.
And then the other, yeah. He was the first guy. Not the
And that lane.
Is he really? He pushed the manipulation part, but he didn't push the Marxist part. And he made it to 64. When I went to 73, I took a media class. His book was only 9 years old, but he was a popular thought. People like that. I came in just at the right time. Because that was the time, not the 60s.
70?
The 60s, they started looking at it.
Wait, you were 73 to
77. So between 1968 and 1970, it furthered the concepts, the general concepts of the 60s because of the war. But really between 1970 and 1973, I was in the tail end. 1970 and 1973 were the students who were studying under Marshall McLuhan, getting their master's degree, and becoming teachers. Those were the ones at that time who made it. They must start the revolutionary brothers. Yeah, maybe before my brother. So between 1970 and 1973 was that time period. It happened to be the time period of the greatest movies that were ever made. But from 73 onward, all of a sudden, it got into subcultures, it got into this is not going to work, we really want to make money, and it diluted very quickly. By the early 80s, it was all over. Okay? But they still had many things happening. So between 70 and 73 was it. So when I was in there, I was in the tail end, I had those teachers who truly believed that the society would change because of the change, not now.
And that's his belief.
Oh yeah, they were much more socialist than we were. We're socialist than
Oh, hello.
anyways.
Hi, May. How are you?
Hi. Hello, Heidi.
Hi, Heidi. Hi, Verna.
Oh, Heidi is still connecting.
Hello, how are you?
Great. How are you this evening?
Hi.
Here's just Thomas. Hi, Thomas.
Good evening, everyone.
Good. How's school, Thomas?
Oh gosh, busy season. My goodness,
Yeah.
I'm not paying attention to anything till like Tuesday or Wednesday. Then we'll really get the truth.
Yeah. It's supposed to be next week, right? When they or was your school open? No, your school was. Everybody was closed, including your school, right?
Everyone was close.
Elementary's coming in the 7th, and then special ed on the 10th.
Great.
Oh, okay.
Tentatively, that's what I keep telling my principal. Tentatively.
Tentatively.
Yeah, it's
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
nice to see everyone.
You too. Everybody staying healthy,
So far, yeah.
safe.
No,
Well, Heidi is still connecting. I don't know.
Yep. Maybe issues with her internet connection. Possibly.
no, we're not.
She may need to go out and come back in. It might help.
Oh,
I'll get some weights and then work out here.
sorry.
Bless you. Hey, Thomas, you popped over there on my screen.
And I'm gonna have class. Oh yeah.
So are the kids ready for the holidays, or is it just so weird this year?
No, it's kind of the same, you know.
Yeah.
We can keep this same spirit of everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are actually used to this virtual stuff. They're on Snapchat all the time and other,
Yeah, it's this generation. They're so comfortable with anything electronic, any Zooms, IMs, virtuals. Yeah. This is kind of their second home, basically. It's the virtual world. Yeah. Here comes Aaron. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
I am well, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you.
Nice
All
to
right, I
meet you.
have, yeah, and I have your, I have the PowerPoint all queued up. So,
Great. Thank you. I'm ready.
Hi,
Oh,
Erin.
yeah.
Hi, Verna.
Oh, yeah. Background is backwards, but that's okay.
It looks forwards to me. Oh, that's
Oh, I
weird.
don't-
All right, I'll fix it.
When we, I don't know how it works, but anyway.
That's so
If
funny.
to us, it's
Yeah,
all,
just
I mean,
reverse,
the
yeah.
logo, yeah. The
I'll
pictures.
The
doesn't
logos
matter.
are, yeah,
That's
yeah.
so
because-
funny. Okay, thank you.
So we are, okay, wait a bit.
We got a couple minutes.
Yeah, it was.
Is that better?
Same,
On the settings, you could put mirror my background.
exactly.
That's what I did.
Mirror.
You
And
can
it's-
go to where your camera's at, it'll give you a drop down, it'll say mirror.
Mhm.
I did, I clicked it.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The mayor is because.
How about now?
So Erin and Verna, can you just put your, the chat box is like our attendance sheet at the meeting if we were in person. So just put your name and affiliation in there.
Sure.
You see what I'm doing, Erwin? It's switching me back side to side.
No, you have a plain background, Thomas.
No, I'm saying, but I'm switching the mirror. You see it?
Oh, can't really tell.
I see it changing, or is it just me?
It's just you.
Yeah, I think it's just you.
I'm gonna keep my hand up and switch it. Now?
Nope.
Oh my gosh, this is weird.
Like it won't stick.
Yeah, that's so weird. I'm in my house, my hand is going like this.
Really?
Wow. That's
How about
weird.
now?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Well, it doesn't look very good backwards.
It's gonna be on YouTube. Oh, wait, are we recording? Oh my God. My time is going. Oh, let me
Yeah.
pause it. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the monthly committee meeting of Manhattan Community Board 3's Health, Seniors, Human Services, Youth Education, and Human Rights Committee. Before we start the meeting, I am going to hand it over to Larissa, who will explain the procedures of the meeting.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our meeting. First off, I'd like to let you know that our meeting is being recorded. If you are not a committee member, I would ask that you please sign in by entering your name and affiliation and any item you would wish to speak on into the chat box. If you could, to eliminate background noise, please stay muted unless you are speaking. You can mute and unmute yourself on your desktop computer. You can unmute using the microphone button at the left of your screen, or you can press your space bar to temporarily unmute yourself. Once you let go of the space bar, you're muted again. If you are calling and joining us by phone, simply tap the mute icon on your button on your phone screen, or you can unmute with the Zoom app if you're in the app. If you would like to speak, we ask that you please raise your hand. You can do that virtually or physically if you have your camera on, and we can call on you. To raise your hand, if you're on a desktop computer, just go to your participants window at the bottom of your screen and click the button labeled raise hand. If you are joining us by phone, it's *9. If you have any difficulties or trouble or questions, just put those in the chat. I will be monitoring those from time to time during the meeting, and I can help you out. We are going to have presentations tonight, and our chair is going to take comments and questions. The comments and questions will come from the board members first, and then from the public. And you will have a 2-minute time limit to speak. And if there are any questions, again, just put those in the chat and I'm happy to help you. Welcome.
Okay, so thank you, Larissa. So today's meeting, we have mainly two main agenda items. The first one, we're going to hear from the Department for the Aging. They have a new initiative called New Friendly Voices, which is to combat social isolation, especially among senior citizens. So we will hear from them. The second thing is will be about COVID-19 testing at Department of Education schools, particularly with the special education students and the District 75 students and all the issues that are involved. And we have two speakers. One will be from the Citywide Council on Special Ed, and the other one is the Citywide Council on D75 schools. They're not here yet, but they'll come soon. All right, so before we, so the first thing we'll do is we will approve the minutes and take the roll call. Thomas?
Okay. So members present at our first vote, we're gonna have Mei Lee's here. Larissa's here, David's here. Eric, you with us? Eric Diaz? I know I saw you at the beginning. How you doing? Shirley Fennessy? Is Shirley with us?
She was here just a second ago. There she is. Okay.
Okay, thanks. And Deborah's not here. Tatiana's here.
Yes.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm here.
Heidi?
Yep, I'm here.
Carmen? And yes, I see Carmen's there. We see you, Carmen. Okay. That concludes our roll call.
Okay, now for
You got
the
me
minute-
right? Yes, or whatever. Okay, sorry.
Okay, for the minutes, I sent out the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any changes to it? Okay, so if there are no changes to it, then they've been approved. Okay, great. So let's just, okay, before we dive into the meeting, any public speaking or community announcements? Okay, I guess not. All right. Okay, so let's just go to the our first presentation from DEFTA, that's the Department for the Aging. We have Verna Arthur and also Erin Newman Keys. There's a presentation and a slideshow, and they will, talk about the new initiative that DEFTA is offering to senior citizens.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I am Erin Neubauer-Keys from the Department for the Aging, and I'm here to talk about our friendly programming, which includes friendly visiting and friendly voices. And because they're both to address social isolation among our older adults, I'm going to speak about both of them. Next slide, please. Let me just change this. I'm going to make this panel a little bit smaller so I can see more. Okay. So just a couple little facts before we start. Did you know that loneliness and social isolation can be as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day? And those who are isolated are at an increased risk for cognitive decline, dementia, and depression. I think we all right now have a better understanding than ever before about what loneliness and social isolation can feel like, but these two are really striking to me. And so I always try to give some perspective when I start talking about social isolation and loneliness. Next slide, please. Oh, can you go back one? Thank you. So like I said before, we have two programs. We have Friendly Visiting and we have Friendly Voices. So which one, what's the difference? Which one's right for which particular client or volunteer? So Friendly Visiting is for our homebound older adults that have additional needs like case management needs. They might need home delivered meals. They might need home care, et cetera. They have a lot of other things going on, whereas Friendly Voices is for older adults that do not have additional needs and they solely need help with social isolation and loneliness. Next slide, please. So first we'll talk about friendly visiting, which again is to address social isolation among the homebound. And just a quick note before we dive into friendly visiting, I recognize that the picture in front of you is two people very close together. And we are not doing in-person visits right now since the pandemic. Everything is on the phone and virtual. So I've adjusted the presentation a little bit to take out the in-person component, but just keep in mind, once it is safe to do so, we are planning on visits happening again in person. Next slide, please. So what is friendly visiting? Friendly visiting programs are throughout New York City's 5 boroughs. We match homebound older adults with volunteers in their communities. Those volunteers call at least once per week for 6 months or longer, and they provide socialization and companionship. We have 14 programs that cover specific geographic areas throughout the 5 boroughs. And then we have 1 program at Griot Circle, which serves citywide LGBTQ older adults of color. And Dept became involved in friendly visiting back in 2017. And since then, more than 1,500 older adults have been visited by a friendly visitor. After 6 months of visits, 42% of those reported a decrease in feelings of loneliness and 54% reported a decrease in isolation. Next slide, please. So how does friendly visiting work? Like I said before, friendly visiting is for folks who receive case management. So prior to receiving the friendly visiting, they first need to complete an intake with a case management agency that serves their community, and also an assessment where the case management intake person will review with them other benefits and entitlements that they may be eligible for. Once that is completed, then they're going to make that referral to the friendly visiting program that is either within that case management agency or linked with that case management agency. Once that referral is made, the friendly visiting coordinator for that program will complete an interview with the older adult. And that interview is all about that client. What do they like to do? What are their hobbies? What's important to them? And also they'll work with them to understand what their expectations are for participating in the program. Everybody comes in with a different expectation of what they want, and for volunteers and clients on both sides, in order to have the best experience possible, we want to understand their expectations. Once the coordinator has completed that interview, they will identify a potential volunteer. They'll let both parties know, hey, I have somebody picked out for you. And if both parties agree, they're going to schedule the first phone call, and the coordinator will be on that call to make the introduction. Every once in a while, both parties say, no, we don't need you on the call. We can introduce ourselves, we're good. But usually people feel a lot more comfortable when there's that initial introduction. And usually the coordinator stays on the phone just for a few minutes to kind of help them ease into the conversation, and then often excuses themselves and lets the volunteer and the client continue to get to know each other on their own for that first call. Next slide, please. So after the first phone call, the coordinator checks in with both parties, and hopefully they both say yes. And if they do both say yes, then they are going to continue to talk 1 to 2 times per week. And we ask them to just talk for as long as feels comfortable. When we were doing the visiting in person, we asked them to visit for about an hour, but on the phone, obviously it can be a little bit awkward to like set a timer or try to talk for a full hour. So we ask them to just talk for as long as feels comfortable. Oftentimes at the beginning of the friendship, the conversations are a little bit shorter. And then as they get to know each other more, the conversations become longer and deeper, like a lot of conversations and friendships do. The volunteer is going to report those calls to the coordinator, excuse me, as well as any issues that come up during the call. And that can be all types of things, right? It could be, I'm concerned about the older adult's mental health. I'm concerned that the bathroom ceiling fell down and the landlord won't come fix it, or, runs the gamut. All different types of things come up. And this is a really good way for us to know what's going on with that older adult and being able to address that issue much quicker than if we were just, kind of waiting for the older adult to let us know. The volunteer always knows things a lot sooner. And then the coordinator is going to check in with both the client and the volunteer regularly, meaning like once every 1 to 2 months. That coordinator is going to connect with each of them one-on-one and just, find out how's the friendship going, how's the experience going, are there any concerns or anything like that. We also offer ongoing support to the volunteers as well as training. So the volunteer in the beginning, which I'll talk about a little bit later, is going to get an orientation in the beginning, but then throughout their time in the program, there are trainings on issues that older adults might face, such as cognitive decline, elder abuse, other benefits and entitlements, things like that. They're not mandatory trainings, but we do get a pretty good turnout, and we, really encourage volunteer participation. And then, of course, we also have volunteer recognition and fun events. And one thing that's been added since the pandemic is the programs are starting to have monthly, like Zoom gatherings for volunteers to just come together and have their volunteer community online. And also they can address and talk about different things that maybe they're struggling with. One thing that comes up a lot right now is some people feel like they're running out of things to talk about on the phone. So it's been a really positive gathering for a lot of volunteers and an opportunity to connect with other volunteers. Next slide, please. So like I said earlier, before COVID, things were a little bit different, and I do want to reiterate that again. They were visiting once a week for at least an hour. In March, we asked them, we told them, please don't visit in person anymore until further notice. And for folks who joined the Friendly Visiting after March, before they visit in person in the future, whenever that's safe again to do so, they are going to need to meet in person with the coordinator first, just so we can do our due diligence and have met everyone in person, and also made sure that everyone's home is appropriate for a volunteer to go to. Next slide, please. So that's it on Friendly Visiting. Shifting over to Friendly Voices. Excuse me, we used to, like I said before, we were serving homebound older adults within Friendly Visiting, but there was this really large population of older adults that were contacting us saying, I don't really have any other needs, but I'm lonely and I need a friend. And as social workers, we would have to try to help figure out a need so we could put them in the program, or we would just have to say no. And that was painful, frankly. I really hated saying no, because I was a coordinator for about 8 years, and that was a very frustrating, difficult, sad part of my job, to turn away lonely people. So when I came to DIFTA, one of the things that I advocated for was an opportunity to be able to address this with older adults that didn't have any other needs. So we came up with Friendly Voices, which stands for Virtual Opportunities, Improving Connections with Elders, which is just what it says. It's a virtual opportunity. So Friendly Voices is meant to only be on the phone and on video. We recognize in the future, someday, people probably will visit in person, but that's not, obviously we don't want them to do that now, but it's also not a part of the structure of Friendly Voices. Next slide, please. So what is Friendly Voices? Like I said, virtual opportunities, improving connections with elders. And we have it's a little bit similar and a little bit different to Friendly Visiting. We do match older adults with a volunteer, but we also have another aspect of it, which is matching older adults with each other, or matching them with a group, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. But again, we also provide training and ongoing support to volunteers and clients to make sure everything's going well. While Friendly Visiting programs are embedded within the community in different agencies, Friendly Voices is run right out of DIFTA. Next slide, please. So the types of connections, like I was just mentioning, we have what we call the classic, which is volunteer to client, matching volunteers that are at least 18 years old up to, I think our oldest volunteer is 92 or 93 or something like that. calls are held for a minimum of 6 months, and they happen on the video or on the phone. But we also had a lot of older adults that said, you know, I don't really want to be matched with a younger person. I want to be matched with someone like me. And I used to have to say, you know, I don't have any volunteers that are 85, 90 years old. I'm not able to do that. But now with the peer-to-peer model, we're able to match them together. And we're trying to match older adults that are within a 10-year age difference of each other, if possible. And we also realized that we needed to shorten that commitment. Kind of setting two people up to be friends for 6 months really felt kind of overwhelming to a lot of folks. And so we decreased that commitment to about 8 weeks, with obviously the option to just continue after the 8 weeks if everything is going okay. And again, those can happen on the video or the phone. And then we also learned that there were a lot of people that the one-on-one matching didn't really appeal to them. It felt like, excuse me, a lot of pressure or not really the experience that they were looking for. And so we decided to establish this group engagement. We're gonna, volunteers run those groups, and the groups can be about a shared goal, interest, or purpose. So we, and we're developing the subject or the interest of the group based on who wants to be in the group. So we have ideas such as, and again, this is brand new, so we don't have any groups that have started yet, but we have a lot of interest in that. So groups of people who are maybe immigrants from the same country, groups of people who maybe like, you know, have a shared interest, like they love classic movies, or they love cooking, or they want to talk about life history or things like that. You know, we're open to all different kinds of groups. But again, that commitment is going to be 8 weeks. And after the 8 weeks, or as it's coming to an end, group members will be able to decide, do they want to stay in the group? Do they want to change the group? Do they want to allow new group members in, et cetera? We really want that, the kind of the structure in the future of the group to really be based on what the group wants and what the group is looking for. We do have a preference for video, but we recognize that a lot of older adults do not have the technology. So some of the groups are going to be based on the phone. And speaking of technology, I often get the question, are we going to be able to provide technology? And the answer is yes, we really want to, and we're working diligently on it. I do believe in the future we will be able to have some technology. We don't have it in hand right now, but it's in the works. It's on the way. It's happening. Next slide, please. So how does it work? It's very similar to friendly visiting, so I'll just go through it a little bit more quickly. The coordinator is going to complete an interview on the phone with the older adult. The older adult is going to need to sign an agreement just that they understand everything and how the process is going to go. The client and the coordinator together are going to determine which engagements are the best fit. Some people might want to be in a group and a one-on-one. Some people might only want to be in one particular engagement, and that is fine. The coordinator will identify whichever volunteer or peer or group sounds like and seems like the best match. They're going to schedule that first call or group and then introduce them similarly to the friendly visiting. Next slide, please. And again, just like in friendly visiting, after the first group or call, the coordinator is going to check in, make sure everybody agrees, everybody's feeling good about it. If they all agree to continue, then they're either going to talk 1 to 2 times per week, or the group is going to meet each one time per week for 45 minutes to an hour. Just like friendly visiting, they will report the calls or the groups to the coordinator, as well as any issues that come up that the coordinator can follow up on rather. And they're going to also connect with them one-on-one once every 1 to 2 months, just to kind of have a little bit longer of a conversation and a deeper dive into what their experience is like. And also, just like with friendly visiting, there's ongoing volunteer support, training, as well as, I don't know if you can see it on the bottom there, but the volunteer recognition and events. Next slide, please. So just a brief little part about the volunteer, because a lot of people ask me, what's a volunteer have to do? What's the commitment, etc. So we'll just talk a little bit about that. Next slide, please. So volunteers in Friendly Visiting and Friendly Voices, they provide what we like to call friendship with awareness, meaning friendship with letting the coordinator know, hey, my older adult is seeming down, or we've got the issue with the bathroom ceiling again, or, you know, being aware of those types of things and knowing that there is help here, and we're here to help address those issues. We also need the volunteer to be a consistent presence in that older adult's life with that commitment of the once a week, and just a friendly ear to talk to, like we all need as a friend. But the volunteer is not to be, whether they are in real life or not, we don't consider them in this volunteer program to be an expert in social services, to be their counselor, to report everything, or to do errands, chores, things like that. We talk a lot to the volunteers and the clients about boundaries and what we need to respect the role of the volunteer, what they're here to do and what they're not here to do. And that's really important for everyone's, you know, everyone's success and everyone's positive experience. Next slide, please. So what's the process? What's the commitment? To become a Visiting or Voices volunteer, the process is very similar. Volunteers need to complete an application. They go through an interview with the coordinator. They need to do a reference check, a criminal background check, and then an orientation. And the commitment again is to do one call or visit per week for 6 months or longer, as well as to communicate weekly or monthly with the program coordinator, whatever that program coordinator deems appropriate and necessary for that particular match. So sometimes people are really good at doing that call and that visit every week, but they're not quite so good at communicating with the coordinator. And that's why I put that on here whenever I do these types of presentations, because that communication is equally as important. So we can help provide the best service we can to the older adult. Next slide, please. So I just have a couple of quick little stories. So the first one is Carmen and Carmen. I had two clients, rather a client and a volunteer, both just happened to be named Carmen, and they lived very close to one another. Carmen, the volunteer, did not really speak very much English. She was a home health aide, and just, I said, a home health aide, my goodness, you have time and energy to also be a friendly visitor? She said, yes, absolutely, I love older people. So I matched her with Carmen, the client. And Carmen, the client, was very homebound, very mobility impaired, but spoke English and Spanish. And so it really became this beautiful reciprocal helping relationship where Carmen, the client, helped Carmen, the volunteer, with her English and things related to you know, needing to understand different things in English. And then Carmen, the volunteer, was able to come in and just be this like amazingly beautiful, loving, consistent presence in Carmen, the client's life, which Carmen, the client, at the time did not have. They were matched for about 4.5 years until, unfortunately, Carmen, the client, passed away. But they both loved each other, and they also loved that we called them the Carmens. they thought that was so cute. Yvonne and Yvonne, client and volunteer again. Yvonne, the client, was about 85 years old, and Yvonne, the volunteer, was about 20. And when I met Yvonne, the volunteer, I already had met Yvonne, the client, and I knew immediately that they would be a great match. Their personalities reminded me of each other. Their energy reminded me of each other. And when I told Yvonne, the volunteer, about Yvonne, the client, she said, oh my God, I've never met anyone named Yvonne ever before in my life. And she just thought that was the best thing. And it was really lovely to see how their friendship just grew, and it was beautiful. And as far as I know, I believe they are still visiting, and it's been, I think, about 3 years now. Martha and Mildred were both older adults. Martha was the volunteer and Mildred was the client. They lived about 10 to 12 blocks from each other. They both had husbands that had fallen ill that they had cared for, and that both husbands had passed away. And they both came to the program saying, you know, I need a friend, I need something to do. Martha still had her mobility, but Mildred did not. And they were in friendly visiting, and the coordinator, myself, would go with the match, the volunteer each time to do the introduction in person. And I'll never forget this. Martha and I walked up the steps to Mildred's apartment. We walked in the kitchen and Martha said, "Mildred?" And Mildred said, "Martha?" And they both started yelling and crying and all kinds of things. They knew each other 50 years earlier. I still get chills when I talk about this. They knew each other 50 years earlier and they had lost touch. And, you know, they didn't grow up in the time of social media. And so they just, you know, they had their children in their lives and they cared for their husbands and all of those things. And they just hadn't ever been able to connect again. And at that point I was like, wow, you know, I'm a great matchmaker. But it was awesome. And they both said, you know what, this is such a great program and you know, we love it, but we're good. We don't need friendly visiting because we have this history to build on. So unfortunately they did leave the program, but I still felt like that was like an amazing success story. One of my favorites. And then the last one, real quick, is Anne. And Anne was one of the biggest cheerleaders and lovers of friendly visiting that I ever met. She was one of my first clients. She loved friendly visiting. And then she became involved in the Virtual Senior Center. And although this presentation is not about the Virtual Senior Center, I think it really speaks to how powerful belonging to a group can be. So Anne loved friendly visiting, like I said, and then she became involved in Self-Help's Virtual Senior Center, and she became involved in this group. I don't remember what the group was about. Maybe it was about books, or I'm not sure, it doesn't matter. But there were about 5 to 6 people in the group, and she started telling me about the group and how cool all of these people were from all different places and backgrounds. And then after a few months, she said to me, "Erin, I love you, but I don't need friendly visiting anymore. I have a community now. I have all these friends. I've got, you know, Betsy from this place and, you know, Sally from this place. And as much as I want to keep doing this, I don't need to because I have this great group of friends now." And selfishly, I was a little bit sad to say goodbye to Anne, of course, but really that's what we're here to do, is help people not feel isolated and feel like they belong and feel like they have connections. And that's what that group really did for Anne. So just a few stories that I love to tell and were some highlights of my time as being a friendly visiting coordinator. Next slide, please. So how to make a referral or become a volunteer. You can pass on this contact information to anyone that you think should have it. You can call Aging Connect, or I have also listed my contact information here. If anybody wants to reach out to me, my phone number and email is listed here, and you can feel free to do that anytime. As you can tell, I love talking about friendly programming, so I welcome any sort of questions, comments, etc. And that's it.
Well, thank you very much, Erin, for such a a thorough presentation. Now we will take questions, and we can have a discussion. So those of you, we'll start with the committee members, and please raise your virtual hand. If you can't, then wave in the screen. Thomas.
That was so refreshing to hear in these times. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I was writing down questions in my notebook, but you hit most of them with the presentation. But thank you. I did want to ask, do you accept volunteers citywide, or is it more like in this district only?
Citywide. And actually now, so friendly visiting is often based on geography, right? Because when we're visiting in person, it's got to be convenient. But with Friendly Voices, we have people from other states. Somebody who lives in Florida, grew up in New York, really wants to connect with a New Yorker. So yeah. And volunteers, by the way, do need to be 18 years old or older. And we take any languages. So sometimes we'll get an older adult that speaks a language that maybe we don't have a volunteer at that time that speaks that language. We do outreach for that language. And it's awesome just to see how people just rise up and say, hey, I speak that language, I'll do this. So we can, if we don't have it, we'll find it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Eric?
Hi guys.
Hi.
Sorry about that. Aaron, I got a question, and forgive me if you answered it. My son was having a little episode. You might have said it. My question is about the number of seniors in this district that are enrolled in the program. Do you have that information?
I don't have it offhand, but I could absolutely find it. Yes. Pardon my ignorance, but which areas do you cover in Manhattan?
So this would be, so we cover 2 community districts. We're like part of 2, but it's Community Board 3 districts. So the boundaries, you can find them online at our website, rather than me explain it, but it's
kind of like Southern Manhattan though?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
so that whole area is covered by Encore Community Services for friendly visiting. And then for Friendly Voices, it's just all at DFTA.
Oh, Eric, were you talking about the community board district or the area that you serve? I mean, your organization serves.
No,
Eric?
more the Community District 1, parts of Community District 2 that make up Community Board 3. Just that kind of area.
Oh, yeah. So it's like below Houston.
Yeah, that's Encore.
East Village, Lower East Side, Chinatown. Well,
Yeah,
East
so
Village is above Houston. Yeah.
That case management agency is called New York Foundation. And then the friendly visiting program that works with New York Foundation is called Encore Community Services.
Oh, okay. So for the friendly visiting, you're saying that people have to connect with a case management organization, the designated one.
Correct. And for you all, that is New York Foundation.
So
Okay, that's helpful. That's more clarification. They have to enroll in those case management services.
Yes, so you can also always call out Aging Connect. It's sort of like our catch-all, of all the questions.
So how do they know, how would they be connected with it to start with?
They can call Aging Connect, and Aging Connect will do a warm handoff and introduce them to the intake coordinator at New York Foundation.
Okay, and New York Foundation has, they have operated senior housing before. Is it that New York Foundation?
I believe so, but I'm not as familiar with that part of it.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Hi, May. I have a question. Sorry, I was waving my hand. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So do you reach out? We have a lot of NORCs here in the neighborhood. Do you reach out to the NORCs and get clients that way? Are you connected with them?
Yes, we are connected with them. Some NORCs actually have friendly visiting built into their programming and some don't. But Friendly Voices is open to everyone who does not need the case management, and friendly visiting those that do have it. And yes, we do outreach to them as well.
But do you contract with any nonprofits? Well, besides the case management organizations, like some of the nonprofits who probably have other contracts with DFTA, to run senior citizen centers, for example.
Specifically for friendly visiting, we have contracts with the different agencies, and we engage with them, but it's really covered by those specific programs, those specific friendly visiting.
Oh, okay. The friendly visiting that you had before, that's the face-to-face visiting. You do contract with different nonprofits, but the Friendly Voices is run directly by DFTA and staffed by DFTA employees.
Correct.
All right. Are there any other questions? Especially from those of you who may serve seniors or know seniors. Well, Carmen.
Hi. Erin, I know that I saw this programming as part of the DFTA Commissioner's newsletter, but do you have an email address? I also run a NORC, by the way.
Oh, great. I personally do. The Friendly Voices also has its own email address, which is fvoices aging.nyc.gov. I know my last name is so long, you can't even memorize it to remember my email address.
It's okay. It's because I know that with my particular set of seniors, they'll probably be more apt to be volunteers than actual clients.
Great. And, you know, thanks for bringing that up. However, an older adult comes to us and wants to be, that's where we take them. If we get a 95-year-old, actually I did today, I got a 95-year-old who wants to be a volunteer. Great. She can be a volunteer. I'm not going to try to make her into a client if she wants to volunteer.
That would be great. Yeah, because I'll certainly be, because every week I do send out to them like a whole email blast of information. And for the most part, they just basically want someone to talk to.
Yeah, great. We'd love to have them.
All right. Thank you, by the way. This is great information.
F voices at aging.nyc.gov.
Correct. F voices, yes.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? Committee members or perhaps members of the public, you know, those of you who are not on the committee, do you have questions for Erin?
This is Verna. I don't have a question. I just want to say that is why I brought Erin up to make the presentation, because she has all the stories and the information being the specialist. And thank you again, Erin.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, those were amazing stories about, especially about those two friends who knew each other 50 years ago.
It was so cool. I couldn't believe it.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so we have your information and we have the slideshow, which we can certainly, you know, pass around to the committee members, and, you know, we will send that up to them as part of the minutes. Okay, so
Sure.
if they can always review it and just contact you directly.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so then, okay, well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, okay, you're welcome to stay for the next one, especially if you're interested in all the going-ons at DOE.
I am. I'm gonna listen up.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So our next agenda item will be, we have Paulette Ha and Grisel Cardona. Is it Grisella? You're Paulette, right?
I'm Paulette. And I'm
then-
Grisel Cardona. Thank you.
Okay,
for
Gris. Okay, so they are from, Paulette is from the Citywide Council on Special Ed. Yes, and Grisel is from the Citywide Council on District 75 Schools. So now we are going to talk about all the things, you know, the issues regarding COVID-19 testing and the schools and the testing of these students. You know, at the last meeting, we had talked about how DOE had said there would be this random monthly testing, but it isn't exactly happening that way. And I know it's very complicated. So we're just, can you at first, well, it first came up to us from Thomas, who actually is, you know, works at one of the D75 schools, but could you maybe give just a little introduction to what's happening now with the testing?
Sure, I'll start.
Or how because I know that, you know, I mean, there's supposed to be this testing, and for example, there's supposed to be this permission given, but, you know, giving the permission and getting it is another thing. Right? Yeah, that's been an issue.
Yes.
So.
Well, let me start by saying that the Citywide Council for Special Education is an advisory board to the DOE. We're elected by parents. We are all parents, as is my colleague here, Grisel, who is representing the D75 community. We wish we had presentations to give you, but unfortunately, the DOE still has not released a formal letter about what the testing will look like for our families of students with disabilities or our D75 community. However, we do have some information that we are able to share. We wish it was more. We all wish it was more, because we as parents ourselves are just as frustrated and confused and stressed out and worried about what the reopening is looking like. So I do want to acknowledge that first and foremost, that we're all experiencing some form of trauma one way or another because of the abrupt closing and because of the rush of the opening. So in that vein, we're here to provide whatever clarity that we can. We're here to help share resources that we have available as of right now for our parents. And whatever we can't answer, we will bring back to the DOE and try to get further answers for you. But we are hoping that there will be some guidance sent out officially from the DOE by the end of the week. So that being said, Griselle, am I forgetting anything?
Yeah, so a lot of the parents, they've been concerned about the way the testing is happening, how often, and what does that look like, especially for students with special needs. Some of our students, they have sensory issues and a whole lot more. So it's testing around students of special education and District 75 is it's a very tricky. So we're working very hard and diligently to make sure that when it comes to the testing that it's done where parents are actually okay with and happy. So
So that being said, well, I guess we'll open the floor to questions.
Hey, how you doing? This is Thomas Rosa. I'm a special education teacher, and we're living in this in real time. I'm actually assigned in my building full time because I'm a dean of students in a special education high school, and I'm so grateful for our staff that we've done an amazing job. Even when there've been close calls with people in proximity to some of the staff, we've been able to follow the protocols and everyone's been safe in our building. So that's been helpful. A concern that I had, I understand there are medical accommodations that can be given for some kids. We don't have that necessarily happening in my school. But what we are concerned about is they're expected to be back Thursday. I keep saying it's tentative because it's going to change a lot over the weekend.
Mhm.
But if a student does not have the consent, will they really be put on remote or only? That's the question that we have.
Okay, so as of the latest information that we've gotten from the DOE and from H&H, because ideally they're the ones really putting down the guidance in terms of testing. The guidance that has been given out is that there is a medical waiver that the parents can apply for their child to exempt them from the random testing. There is also a special education waiver that can be initiated by either a parent or by someone at the school. For instance, Thomas, if you know for a fact you have certain students that just will not submit to random testing either for behavioral reasons, for sensory issues, for various different accommodation issues, things of that nature, then you yourself can actually apply for a special education waiver for that particular student. Now, once the special education waiver is initiated, that student is exempt from random testing, even while waiting for approval of that particular waiver. The medical waiver itself needs to be filled out by an actual physician. So that's slightly different. And that's more about if the child has constant nosebleeds, obstructions in the nasal cavity that would prevent them from getting an actual swab, that's where the medical waiver would come in. But the special education waiver is something, and again, this is something that is still not totally concrete, but the guidance that we've gotten as of this week is that for those who applied for a special education waiver, whether it's been approved or is pending, the family is responsible to have that child tested outside of the school within 7 days if that particular child is chosen to be part of the random sample.
Mm-hmm.
And I will be happy to put in the chat the link on the DOE site on where the waivers can be downloaded and assessed if you want to share it out with your community.
That's really helpful because, we're concerned. Thankfully, my school, we're equipped. We've actually been remote seamlessly. We have the mechanics for that. and the kids who don't have tech is maybe about 6 in the entire organization. But
Oh,
there's some
that's
schools,
great.
yeah, but some schools are struggling mightily,
Mhm.
and I'm very concerned because I know for a fact, not being negative, just some parents are not going to have these consents. So it's going to be
Absolutely.
another conundrum. If on your side, have you heard anything about enhanced tech? Because they could provide the tech. I don't know why it's taking one of my kids. He has an IEP. We put him in an inclusion program. He's doing phenomenal. For the first time ever, he's had a chance to get credits, and he hasn't had a device for about 6 weeks. So he's
Yes.
literally participating in the curriculum over the phone. Like that's,
Yes. I know.
we
And
need
this
that
is
and
since March, right? Because we've been in quarantine since March. So,
yeah.
I mean, we're talking about like going on 9 to 10 months at this point of this is the form of education he's been getting.
Well, I just
Um,
got him into a credit bound program in September. So it's like, it's like a ticking clock.
mhm.
Like he's
Yeah.
actually getting credits. But so I mean, if we can do something also to enhance the turnaround, it's just taking too long.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing with your students. Being a parent of a D75 child, I value and appreciate our teachers so much, and we know that their success hinges on making sure that they have all the supports they need, whether it's in a teacher, whether it's related services, whether it's assisted tech. So we parents understand immensely how important it is to make sure that our children have the devices in place in order to even participate. Unfortunately, this has all been centralized through DOE. It's through purchasing. It's, we keep hearing the same numbers over and over and over again. 350,000 devices were ordered. Another 100,000 children are still waiting. 60 devices are supposedly at DOE right now, and we're on route for distribution right before they close. Our buildings close November 19th. So I can tell you from the special education office, they have been working diligently trying to expedite those devices to schools that have had long-standing orders, and especially to our D75 and our students in temporary housing first and foremost. So the only thing that I can suggest to you, Thomas, is to continue the conversations with your principals. Trying, the principals have outlets that they can reach out to, either the District 75 superintendent's office to help escalate and try to figure out, ETAs on when your site can anticipate these devices. And feel free to CC our councils, both Grizel and my council, so that we can elevate the concerns. We've been trying to kind of grassroot it out since the anything to trying to get data from the DOE is kind of like asking for like government secrets. But we've been grassrooting out, and we so appreciate the partnership that we have with our CECs and our president's councils in the various districts, who have been trying to give us numbers from their individual schools so that we can kind of collect that data per borough, per district. But it's a long process, and we've been doing this since, I want to say, May, and even now the numbers haven't shifted at all, and that's very, very scary, considering that the majority of our students enrolled in schools overall are remote. So so we recognize that concern, and that's my advice to you as of right now. I wish I had better news for you, but like I said, keep the fight going, and definitely loop us in so that we can help elevate your situation and the situations of all of our D75 schools. Grizel, do you want to add anything? Am I forgetting anything? No, I think so.
Yeah, as far as devices go, I mean, we're all very frustrated. I can give you an example. My son, who's in the CCSE program, his program still have yet to get devices, and I still get yelled at for not showing up for attendance, or him not coming to therapy. But I have 3 kids. I'm doing it by myself. We're all using devices because I too myself go to school, so it's a little difficult. That the devices have yet to be given to the schools for that. I know that there are a couple of other districts that are actually trading devices for giving devices out to those other schools who had extra whoever needed. But my concern with that was, well, a lot of the iOS updates, some of it cannot go past a certain update because of how old the iPad can be. So suggestions that I had made was for teachers to use programs that weren't too much up to date because some of the devices didn't have the capability to use them. So it's very frustrating, and I'm so sorry it's happening around and across the board. But we're here. I mean, we're pushing, and I promise you that. So.
Okay, great. Paul?
Man, I had my hand up a long time. It hurts even virtually. I'm messing around. Thank you for coming on tonight. Much appreciated. Thank you for posting the link in the chat. That actually answered a bunch of my questions from earlier. But I do have two questions right now. How many students from the D75 portal per se crossover and are in District 79 programs? Do you know that off the top of your head, or like if you guys know that? Because I work in partnership with the D79 program. I am a former D, but I do work closely with a D79 program. So I know there's a lot of students from that population that are also affected in D79 programs. They're primarily high school students, though. I don't know if you have any of those numbers readily available. I know the DOE has it on lockdown, but.
Thank you. You hit it right on the head, Paul. We have asked for these numbers because we always feel like D79 is kind of like the forgotten stepchild when it comes to the DOE and, advocating for students for disabilities. Our students are getting educational services till the age of 21. So from what I know anecdotally, because like I said, it's like if we can't get it from the DOE, we're going to try to figure out how to get the information somewhere. So I have reached out to certain people in D79. The transition from D75 to D79, it's not often. Only because the way some of the D79 programs are structured, whether it's a career oriented program, whether it's an affinity program, or there's different models, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So with the D75 program, because the majority of the students that are in D75 are there because they're classified with developmental delays or multiple delays or multiple disabilities. The abundance of programs available to them after your traditional high school setting, after the age of 18, are few and far between. That's the reality of it. So the numbers are going to be low. We don't have definitive numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's maybe like hovering below 10%. But that being said, that does not mean that we have stopped advocating for more programs to extend a career or more ability-based curriculum for our children who are aging out of 18, 19, 20, things of that nature, only because we realize that, it's important for them to know that there is an option for them outside of going into, a particular group setting or living in assisted living for the rest of their adult lives. There has been some success with co-op tech, from what I remember. And I believe that there was talk about expanding the program to Coney Island and Staten Island. But I think once COVID hit, some of those talks were, they're stilted because it's all about funding at this point, right? So I'm going to keep asking for those numbers. And if by some grace of God that I actually do get them from the DOE, I'm more than happy to share them with you, Paul.
Thank you. I just have one final question. Maybe you can answer this. What specific support are you guys looking for from us as a committee and as a board, that we can maybe eventually turn into a resolution, maybe next month as an agenda item? May, I don't know if you want to answer that, or if anybody else wants to answer that. I just want to get a clear idea of where we want to go with this at some point.
Well, I mean, if I could make a suggestion, You know, I've sat on quite a few of these different committees that are community-based and community-led. And my personal ask, and this is, you know, I mean, I'm not going to put my council under the bus or anything about this, but this has been my own personal ask, is that if we can get our community leaders to partner with the local politicians to make broadband universal across the city, that would be instrumental in terms of not only eliminating the digital divide that has been so apparent once COVID hit, but the reality is right now, 75% of our students are learning remotely. And the latest survey from the Citizens Committee for Children released that 60,000 children are still waiting for a learning device, but 90,000 children don't have access to broadband whatsoever. And 230,000 children have spotty or unreliable internet service. So anything that we can collectively do to make universal broadband possible will address a lot of the inequities that we are seeing in education. And, you know, lo and behold, we've got a vaccine on the way within 2 weeks, but that's only, you know, it's like, we don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know how available that's going to be. So we don't know how long we're going to be in this learning environment. So if we can collectively put our powers together to make that happen, I think it'll address a lot of the issues that a lot of our students are being faced with right now, whether they're special education or not.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we need to do, there's something that we have to do. But first of all, I think Shirley is trying to raise her hand or say something.
Sure, yeah, I have a concern that I wanted to raise. So just considering like IEP or D75 students both, you know, any child who's needs a lot of accommodations in a normal classroom, like in an in-person classroom, there's a lot. But when it comes to looking at online learning, the accommodations are much bigger and broader, and I don't know that there's been a lot of exploration around what the new needs are with remote or hybrid or online learning. And I just am wondering how we can sort of consider that, and then think about ways that we can sort of make more global recommendations. You know, like for some kids, toggling between, you know, Google Classroom and an online document and a YouTube video is too much. And maybe they would need 2 devices, but they only have 1 device, or they don't have any devices. So I'm kind of thinking about what are the considerations around students with disabilities, and how are we thinking about what kinds of accommodations could we generally put in place? You know, depending on their IEP, depending on their diagnoses, in order to better support them. You know, I just like my children aren't D75 children, but I look at the kinds of accommodations I had to put in place in their IEP, taking into consideration, you know, remote learning. So I'm just wondering how we can help with that, or if there's a, you know, sort of a citywide initiative, or if D75 is reconsidering this, or if the DOE is reconsidering how IEPs are looked at in terms of remote, hybrid, or, you know, this kind of learning situation.
Yeah, yeah. So just Paulette and Griselle, just a little background. So, you know, that's, you know, the school district that we're in, you know, I mean, our community board had long identified, you know, English language learners, you know, students in temporary housing, students in homeless shelters and temporary housing, and also students with disabilities or with IEPs, as, you know, like, you know, that's what the high needs are in our area. And before the whole pandemic started, we were going to do actually like a resource fair, you know, partnering with CEC1 for, you know, something simple, you know, just to reach out to families of these kids, just to tell them what, you know, to, you know, let them know more about the resources that they have. So that was before we even knew about the pandemic, and we were going to do it in May, and of course we never did it. So I think that what Shirley is talking about sort of, you know, follows up with, you know, what we talked about before. And Shirley, so you had a question for them, right? That was a question you had? You wanted to know more about?
It's a question, but it's also kind of a posing a problem that we need to really think about. Just like, you know, an IEP or a D75 diagnosis is one thing in an in-person situation, but when we're looking at an autistic child or a child with emotional issues or a child with looking at the needs in the remote situation is very different. And so I'm just thinking, my question is kind of posing like, how is the DOE, how is District 75, how are we thinking about new kinds of accommodations that need to be put into place in order to give these children a sense of success in school?
So I know that this is one of the questions that I did ask the district on how are we looking into the IEPs and how are we making sure that the goals that the students have on a case by case are being met, especially for the ones in remote. Because I know that there are students who are on remote that fell behind, right? So the question is, what can we do to assure that they're not falling through the cracks as well? Because these students are vulnerable. And so we could definitely think about what possible ways are different resources that we can pull together, ideas, so that we can make sure that and basically come up with some kind of addition to the resolution or whatever to make sure that we get these students' needs met. Assistive technology, also those kind of devices. I know that there was one organization actually giving out free assistive technology for students who actually needed it. I have to look through my emails for the name and I'll get that to you guys, but I know that there was one company doing it because of the pandemic. But if we can get folks to, you know, I don't know, help out and stuff. I know that one of the D75 schools actually purchased manipulatives, different stuff that they actually needed because they knew that they needed it and that parents couldn't afford certain things. So I know that specifically my son's school, they sent out, they're gonna send out like a little backpack of stuff with different dices and things so that they can do their OT, their services. The other hard part is the parents actually doing the therapy with the child. And so what organization or who can we reach out to actually help parents help their child when it comes to therapy? So that's like another thought that we should also think about. So basically teaching us how to do the OT, teaching us parents, and maybe even providing a certificate so that parents can even use that if they're interested in taking that even further. So creating opportunities while also making sure that we're going through this hard time to, you know, together.
So I guess what I'm thinking is like, is there some kind of like an idea around sort of a blanket policy with offering these kinds of accommodations? I sat in a few months ago on the CEC2 meeting where, you know, a parent was working full time and her child needed OT and she had no ability to provide it and, you know, was struggling because no one could come to her home. So I'm just thinking like, are there ways or are we thinking in terms of like the broader picture with both D75 kids and with children with IEPs with this remote situation. So hopefully there's a vaccine, and by next September, everything will be back to what it was. We've lost a lot of time. And I guess I just want to know if there's a way that we can figure out if there's some kind of a blanket reconsideration of basically all IEPs, all D75 kids, if you have a child with autism, if you have a child that needs OT. So how is the city, how is the DOE considering, how are we helping these children? Because we're losing time, and many parents like yourself and I are like working all day, and we can't provide these services, and there's no outside services to be given. And yet the IEP or the accommodations that they've been offered are not sufficient in the remote learning situation. So I guess that's kind of where I'm thinking, like, what's in place, and what are we like, what's the DOE considering, what's D75 doing, like, how are we combating this issue, and how are we getting in front of it so that it doesn't become even more learning loss for next September, where the kids are sliding even more.
Okay, I'm gonna stop something right here. So, okay, just a little bit about the timing and the process. So the agenda item was really just about COVID-19 testing. But, actually when I was thinking about the agenda item, I could easily see how, we start talking about all this other stuff, because it's all connected and related. So now we're talking about, possibly, having some kind of resolution or, decision. And we're also talking about, the needs, the learning needs of all these students. Should we have put it on next month's agenda and have a more thorough discussion and more speakers, and maybe Paulette and Grisel can come back, or maybe there's others that we need to bring back to give us all these information and answer all these questions that Shirley's asking, like how can we do this and how we can do that. And then, our next month's meeting is in January, so it's not that far away.
Shirley, I hear the frustration in your question and in your voice, and we.
I know, and we can't help but not ask this, because
I didn't mean to open Pandora's box, but when we start to talk about this, like, it's not about swabbing your nose anymore. It's really about, like, how are we servicing our children in the DOE.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna make sure that I give you my information so that we can continue this conversation offline, because your specific situation, there are solutions for it, and I want to be respectful of the time of this of the community board as well, because I know that you have other things on your agenda, and I'm more than happy to come back with other resources. We have connections over at Advocates for Children as well, if you want to talk about
Paulette, I'm sorry, Paulette, you misunderstood. Yeah. It's not that we don't have anything. You're the last thing on our agenda. This is going to be a short meeting. Okay, it's not that we have other things. It's just that our body is probably like yours. So it's all of our agendas are publicly announced, right? Okay. And we only talk about what was publicly announced, not other things, because it's in the name of transparency. So maybe there are others who are interested in the other issue, and we wouldn't want someone to say, well, you talked about this, but you didn't even publicize it on your agenda. I wanted to come, and how did why didn't you let us know? Let the public know.
And then I just want to say,
so that's why I'm asking if we could continue having a more thorough thing next month, because I think it's not too late.
Also, for me, this isn't a personal question. I'm fine with advocating for my own children. It's really thinking of the larger, the people that don't know how to advocate for their children. So I'm not really asking for me. I'm fine with me and my own children, but I'm thinking of the larger question of people who maybe don't have the resources or the connections or the know-how. And that's really where I was asking the question about. So yes, maybe we should table it till January, but I wanted to bring it up because I think it's important, because it's really on my mind.
Yeah, May, I agree with Shirley, and I think we really do need to put this on the agenda for January. I know when my son was in school, if he missed a month or 2 months of his OT, he regressed. And there are so many things, so many points on the IEPs that are just not being met during COVID. How can we address them? Are there plans, are there discussions to address these and meet these needs for these students? And I'm sure, Thomas, you're very interested in that, what's coming down the pike, because who knows how long this pandemic is going to go on. I think it's definitely worth pursuing.
Right, and I heard the expectation is that the schools are going to be like this till the end of June. You know, it's going to be this way.
Right. And IEPs, you know, they're getting ready to redo the IEPs anytime now for a lot of
Oh,
students.
they started. There's
Oh, they
already been
started?
IEP meetings.
Oh my gosh. Oh gosh.
Right,
Okay,
so the
so-
question is, how do we help inform the parents around, so an IEP that made sense in person is not going to make sense now in a remote situation because the situation is completely different. Or a D75 kid who has autism, you know, maybe the supports were great in school, but if it's remote, their supports are completely different now. So I guess that's my thinking around maybe we really need to explore this issue and see how we can support it.
Okay, David and then Tati.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to the point about not having it on the agenda. I mean, strictly what that means is that we cannot vote on something on it tonight. And I understand that we've strayed from the, from the narrow, topic of the agenda. And so maybe we should defer it. But let me just say, if it would be productive for us to continue talking tonight for like planning purposes, we can go ahead and do that. If it would be more productive to wait because we'd have better input, then we can obviously do that as well. We can't not talk about something. I mean, sorry, we're not forbidden to talk about something just because it's not on the agenda is my point.
Okay, thank you, David, for clarifying. Tati?
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Paulette and Griselle. Naomi connected us via email, so thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so I think that we should move this, I mean, not this discussion, but I think that we should be working towards a resolution in January. And I agree with David that if there's like some planning questions, we can do some like preparation now. And if we are allowed to do that, I do have a question. I'm hearing that this resolution would be mainly about broadband technology, accessibility, enhanced technology, things like that. Is there something else that's missing in that? And also, since this agenda item did originally start as, the COVID testing, do you think there's also a benefit to that being some sort of resolution about the problems in schools around COVID testing? Yeah, those would be my questions. If May, you think it's appropriate to talk about those?
Yeah, no, I didn't say we couldn't talk about it at all, but if we're,
okay.
Yeah, but if we're having a resolution, we certainly can plan for it. The COVID testing, it's two different things, and we can have two different, types of resolutions. It's not just gonna have to be one thing.
Yeah.
Just so that the city's test and trace. I mean, this doesn't pertain just to the schools, but the city's test and trace program has been meeting with the community boards, including the Manhattan boards, about just getting more help in terms of, testing and tracing, in the population in general, because, there's just concern all around about the rising numbers. So the question is, what would a resolution look like? If we're doing it in January, we need to plan for it. Do we want to have more information? And what is the information? And what exactly is the resolution? Because there's different things. Like Tati, you sort of talked about 3 different things. The COVID-19 testing, the broadband, and then just this, like the learning needs of the students with IEPs.
Yeah, sorry. I wasn't saying that those would all be one resolution.
No, no,
Uh,
yeah, I understand that, but it's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, maybe the broadband and technology accessibility could be combined into one, but yeah, I'm just wondering if there's something else that we haven't discussed that we should also be doing research on to prepare for, our meeting next month.
Right. And then another thing, well, this is not resolution wise, but Shirley talked about the need to inform parents about something. So that doesn't require a resolution. That's like a, but.
I think for me, it's more like I think that there needs to be sort of a reconsideration of accommodations for children regarding remote learning or hybrid learning. Because maybe there will be a vaccine and next September we'll go back to the other thing. But I think in this environment, we need to really make sure that there is sort of a global thinking around the difference in accommodations between hybrid or remote learning and in-person learning, and what accommodations are given, and whether it's informing parents, like that would be great. But I think like more on the level of how we're considering learning in this environment, I guess.
And you're saying that we need to advocate with the DOE, and therefore this is like a resolution that they should, that they need to consider, that they're not considering enough this difference.
It shouldn't be on parents to try to figure it out. It should be
okay.
on, yeah, exactly.
So they're not doing enough is what you're saying. And it is on parents right now, more. And it shouldn't be on parents so much. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes, it shouldn't be on parents to try to figure it out. I mean, I am Marissa and other parents have a little bit more know-how, but it shouldn't be on parents to try to figure out how to do OT if they have a full-time job and they have to they get a little packet from the DOE and they have to certify themselves. It should really be on the DOE and us to figure out how to help them.
Okay. So that sounds like the making of a resolution. Does it? Oh, David, is your hand up again?
Probably
or
for
is it
January. It's not for now. It's like a thing to think about. We could get some experts in January and think about it.
No, I didn't say now. I'm just I'm talking planning.
Mine is back up.
Is your hand back up?
Yeah.
Okay.
So something that you said about, Paulette said about the pandemic making it, it's like revealing the digital divide and how deep it is. It is more than just schools as well. So I'm thinking, and the pandemic is not going to be ending soon, but if it does end, this need still continues, and it's more than just schools, right? There's employment opportunities, for instance, that people don't have access to. So I don't know if it's a separate resolution or if it's a longer term thing. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people trying to get traction with this. Anyway, it's a moment to emphasize that it is needed, and it may not come to fruition, during the pandemic for the schools, but it does need to happen long term. I don't know if that is helpful comments, but.
Okay. There are things. Okay, so Thomas, your hand is up. Thomas, and then Tati.
Yeah, to piggyback on what David was saying, that definitely could be one of the whereases. If we're talking about broadband, we just had a presentation on seniors, and if some of them actually had connectivity, it would improve some of the outcomes that's already being done in the district. One thing I wanted to bring to to everyone is starting in January, we're going to start distributing hot food for the first time in the schools. They have special containers, so they're going to be serving hot meals. I'm just curious if, because of the students being isolated, is there a food need? And if so, are the schools distributing meals anymore, or has that already been discontinued?
For the food, because I sit on the Lunch for Learners call. There are schools that they still distribute food. The only concern is the cold lunches, right? So there are some schools that are there, they claim that they're supposed to give halal food, but they're giving cheese sandwiches instead. And so it's the food situation is a little bit tricky. I can invite you guys to the next luncheon call if you guys want to join. But it's something that we've been discussing, especially with Chris, who's in charge of the food stuff. And so, but yeah, it's the food is they're still giving it, but it's very the issues with the cold food. Some schools had they changed the milk because some schools received milk that was already old, and it's because of how if it's left overnight or they forget to put it, so it's just 50-50 on a scale. But yeah.
Well, the hot meals are coming, so maybe you guys could explore that. That might be another option for some of the kids.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Tati.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of echo a lot of what Thomas said, and David, but I do think this, clearly this is pointing to a larger issue, all across the board. And I was just thinking, hearing about this, that, when I go to the CEC 1 meetings, I don't know his position. I know his name is Elvis and that he works on like devices. And, he always comes to the CEC meetings and gives like a pretty informative presentation about, the updates on devices and schools and stuff like that. So that might be somebody we might want to invite to next month's meeting. And and I would also be curious specifically about like headphones for students in temporary housing, because that's been raised many times in CEC meetings as a concern.
I like that.
Okay. Eric, did you want to say something?
No, I like what Tati said.
Okay. So next month, you want to hear more about the technology.
Sorry, I can reach out to Naomi and CCU May if that's wanted about connecting us to Elvis.
Okay, and then we are talking about also how what Shirley was talking about, how DOE needs to kind of step up more to, support the students and the parents with the IEPs and figure out what they're, how they're going to get through this year, right?
I don't know who would be able to help us with that, but I feel like there should be somebody that can sort of guide us and guide parents and guide all of our constituents on how IEPs and how accommodations need to change because of the situation that we're in right now. And I don't know who that would be that could help us, but I'm sure they're thinking about it. I mean, I know that I completely reconfigured my children's IEPs considering this from my observations, but there has to be people at the DOE that are thinking about this in depth and can help us to direct our constituents as to how they can help their children.
Okay, so you're saying they already know how to do it. It's just,
well, I'm hoping
they already know how to do it, or they're supposed to.
I think
they
do. I'm guessing they do. Like I can't imagine that I'm the only parent that's made like accommodations based on observations, but there has to be people in the DOE who have been considering different accommodations for children due to the remote learning.
Okay, so should we have a speaker, more a parent speaker, or someone from DOE, or a parent advocate, or a DOE?
Can we get
person?
someone from DOE? I think that's important.
We could.
Yeah, let's do that.
I can find out. Unless y'all know someone already, but I can talk to, what's her name, Michelle, and ask.
Let's ask Michelle.
In the interim, I did put in the chat different resources that you can extend out to families in the meantime until you can put it onto the agenda and have a broader discussion. But I'm a solution-driven person, so it's like I can't imagine, like, I know how many families out there are struggling right now, and I know how many families are hungry for guidance. So so I put down whatever I had readily available that you can share out right now. The DOE did create a Beyond Access series to help parents transition from in-person to remote. And there are additional webinars on there about different behavior tips, how to support your child who's on the autistic spectrum. There's about 12 or 13 different seminars on there right now. So it's a Band-Aid for a much bigger problem, but it's what I can offer at this time. So, and there's also, I put in a contact from Srvcs. They started doing weekly parent engagement forums in order to inform parents next steps if they felt like what they were getting through remote learning just wasn't conducive to their child's situation. So that might be a helpful resource to share out as well. And I put that all in the chat. So.
And I don't know, Srvcs has been doing this before. I mean, this is kind of their specialty, right? So guys, remember, okay, so the other thing is, remember how we were supposed to do that forum in May? Do you think it's something, you know, with CEC1, or, you know, the in-person parent resource fair? Do we still want to do an event for parents? I mean, it will have to be virtual, I imagine. And you think CEC, Tati, you think CEC1 would be interested in something like this? Or is there a need for that in this area? Like, you know, this information session or workshop, or, you know, parent sharing, parent resource?
Sorry, I have my hand up. Should I speak?
Yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead.
All right, I don't want to talk over anybody. Yeah, I think we should, I could ask Naomi. It seems like we're inviting some folks anyways for, you know, a resolution next month. Maybe we could like sort of say we're thinking about doing, if this is something that we're interested in, we're thinking about doing a forum. You know, would you maybe be interested in being a speaker? Because we'll have some folks there already who could be speakers. I know Paulette mentioned about somebody from Advocates for Children, I think. And I know we talked about inviting them, you know, back in May. So if we do have some of these folks already coming, I think it would be great to sort of like talk about it. I think that, yeah, I'm envisioning this sort of as like a resource, virtual resource, obviously virtual resource fair. That's the audiences for parents and like a Q&A sort of thing. I guess I'd want to know if something like this isn't already in the works, so that we're not like just, I mean, I don't know, I guess more.
Yeah, right. No, we should find out if there's a need, or if it's already being done and there's,
yeah,
you know, we don't have to, that's fine too. But, you know, since we're talking about it now, you know, I'm just sort of thinking back to the things that we had planned before.
Yeah, but I do think it's a good idea if it's not being done. Between all of us, there's people that we can invite.
And yeah, Paulette, Paulette and Griselle, you know, feel free to speak out. You don't have to speak up. We sort of like, we don't use the chat box a lot because we just want to have one conversation. Could you just repeat what you had said in the chat box?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that both CCSE and CCD 75, we hold monthly public meetings, just like all the other CECs do. And it's a great way for the public to have access to the special education office. Our speakers vary every month, depending on what the big concern is that particular time. But we recently had John Hammer, who's the executive director for the special education office, and he was able to provide a lot of clarity about the PADS and the RADs, or the program adjustment documents, and how they're being utilized and adjusted for our children that were transitioning into remote because the closing of the building. So that's an additional resource that if you wanted to share with your community, feel free to do so. I know it's very difficult to send an email to the special education inbox and wait, weeks upon weeks for a response. So anything that either, as I said before, myself or Grizel can do through our channels, through sitting on these councils, we definitely want to be able to do so and offer that services to you guys.
And when is the next meeting?
CCSE is December 17th.
Okay.
We're trying to get Josh Wallach, so we'll see.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. Okay, so we seems like we have a bit of so we have some planning to do for our January meeting, and there's a lot of resources that have been shared in the chat box on this issue. Okay, is there anything else? So we have some possible resolutions next month, and we need to bring in some speakers next month. And the possibility of planning a resource fair all next month. Tati, did you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I just had a comment that if there are, these monthly meetings that are public and parents can go to and ask questions, maybe this is something that we can sort of help with, like outreach to families in our district to make sure they know that those meetings are happening so that they can get cued in, more immediately and with like the experts who are going to be there anyways. So yeah, I think maybe this is more of like an outreach role that we can play to families in our district to get to those meetings, and also with our CB3 social media and stuff.
So we should outreach about these meetings, because that's where these parents can, be directly in contact with these experts, is what you're saying, right, Tati?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
And should we still do this resource fair if it's needed? We could outreach about it too. I mean, or maybe, they can be a guest speaker at our resource fair.
I would say the resource fair would be beneficial because we have a different range of influence, the persons on this committee. And like I mentioned in the chat, there's just some parents who show up to things, but how can we reach the ones that are oblivious to what's going on, And we have ways of, in our spheres of influence that we could kind of bring them in. I think it would be worthwhile.
Okay. All right, is there anything else?
I think last month we talked about a few issues we want to kind of revisit for this coming year, even in the midst of COVID.
Okay, wait. Okay, before we get into the other issues, anything else on this?
Okay.
Yeah, well, you're talking, you want to talk about the other, not this, right, Eric?
Right, yes.
Okay, just wait 1 minute. Going once, going twice. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so we're done with this agenda item. And now we are, before we talk about this old new business, do we have any CAB or CEC reports?
I just want to say thank you for having me. I do have to jump off if there's no other questions. But I know that May, you have my email along with Tati. So please feel free to share that. And I also put it in the chat, but in case you didn't see it. But definitely reach out if you need some assistance, gathering more resources, or if you need someone to come in from Advocates for Children or include NYC or Parent to Parent. I'm more than happy to make those connections for you. And just, thank you for holding the space for your community.
Okay, well, thank you for coming and, being so helpful tonight.
I wish I had more answers, but
Yes, yeah. I know what it's like, yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Eric Diaz. Oh, there you are.
Hi.
Hi.
So, okay, just wanted to revisit again the topic for an agenda item. Maybe it's not next month, or maybe it is. It's just following up on the Allure group. I don't know if there's been any updates in the district office, if Susan found out any information, just to see what they're up to during COVID and that whole thing that we pursued with them to restore to the community because of
Yeah.
what happened.
Right. I think she was supposed to call, we were supposed to talk to the Attorney General's office, but I don't think it's been done yet. So I'll remind her about it, okay?
Okay, excellent. Sounds good.
All right, anything else? Okay, if not, then we will have the final vote and vote to adjourn. Does somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion.
May I make a motion? Second, then.
Okay, great. Okay, so Thomas, right?
Give me a second. I'll be right there. Okay, May. Larissa?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
Shirley?
Yes.
Tatiana?
Yes.
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
And Carmen?
Yes.
Was that it?
Yep.
It is.
Okay.
Can I say one thing, May, about the thing about a motion to adjourn? The chair actually can make motions. What the chair does not want to do is make controversial motions that take sides in any way because you'll lose control. But so in the interest of when it's obvious that that's the motion to be made, you can just make it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Okay. All right then. So good night, everyone. Oh, full board is earlier this, look on your calendar. It's a little earlier this month. It's before Christmas.
And also everyone look out for an email regarding the holiday party. I will be sending something out tonight. So put your thinking caps on and get your ugly sweaters out of the closet.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay.
All
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Good night.
Night.
I really want